The morning sun beat down on the busy farmer's market as Tiana rushed through the crowded aisles. Today was not going as planned. Her alarm hadn't gone off, her car barely started, and now she was running dangerously late for her clinical rotation at Memorial Hospital. The bright red numbers on her phone screen seemed to mock her with each passing minute. 20 minutes, she muttered under her breath, weaving between shoppers who seemed to move in slow motion. They're going to kill me if I'm late again. Tiana hadn't meant to cut through the farmer's market, but the main road was backed up with construction, and this shortcut through the community plaza seemed like her only option. Her nursing scrubs already felt sticky in the morning heat as she juggled her oversized tote bag, phone, and the travel mug of coffee she hadn't even had time to sip. The market was unusually crowded for a Tuesday. Colorful stands lined both sides of the walkway with vendors calling out deals on fresh produce and homemade goods. The scent of baked bread and flowers filled the air, but Tiana had no time to enjoy any of it. All she could think about was Dr. Henderson's stern face if she walked in late one more time. Just need to get through here and to the back parking lot, she reminded herself, picking up speed. That's when it happened. Tiana was checking her phone, again, trying to send a quick text to her clinical partner to save her a seat when her shoulder slammed hard into someone. The impact sent her stumbling sideways, coffee splashing over the rim of her mug and onto her hand. But it was the sound of items hitting the ground and a woman's surprised gasp that made Tiana's head snap up. Standing before her was a woman in her early 30s with copper-colored hair pulled back in a neat bun. She wore casual clothes, dark jeans and a loose navy button-up shirt that couldn't quite hide her pregnant belly. The woman had one hand protectively placed over her rounded stomach, while the other reached out to steady herself against a nearby stall. At her feet lay a scattered collection of fruits, a loaf of bread, and a paper bag now soaking up spilled coffee. "Oh my God, I'm so sorry," Tiana blurted, immediately bending down to gather the fallen items. "I wasn't looking where I was going." The pregnant woman took a deep breath, her face shifting from shock to careful composure. "You need to be more careful," she said, her voice calm but firm. "Especially in crowded places." Tiana felt a flush of embarrassment spread across her face. I know, I'm just running so late and She trailed off as she picked up an apple and wiped it with the sleeve of her scrub top. "Are you okay? I hit you pretty hard." The woman nodded slowly, one hand still resting on her belly. "I'm fine, but this could have been worse." Something about the woman's measured tone made Tiana pause. She wasn't yelling or making a scene like most people might after being crashed into. Instead, she maintained an almost professional calm that was somehow more intimidating than anger would have been. "I really am sorry," Tiana said again, gathering more of the spilled items. "Let me help you with these." As she reached for a fallen orange that had rolled near the woman's foot, Tiana noticed something that made her stomach drop. The woman's shirt had shifted slightly during their collision, revealing a glimpse of something metallic clipped to her waistband. It took Tiana a moment to process what she was seeing. A badge. "Here, let me get those," the woman said, carefully bending to pick up the remaining items, seemingly unaware that her badge was now visible. Tiana froze, the orange forgotten in her hand. Was this woman a police officer? A security guard? Whatever she was, Tiana had just body-checked a pregnant law enforcement officer in the middle of a crowded market. "I should buy you new groceries," Tiana offered quickly, standing up with armfuls of rescued produce to replace what got damaged. The woman straightened up with surprising grace for someone carrying extra weight. "That's not necessary, but slowing down might be a good idea, especially in public spaces." A man from behind the nearest produce stand approached them, concern on his weathered face. "Everything all right, ladies? Mrs. Chen's honey jars are right behind you. Wouldn't want anybody falling into those." The pregnant woman gave him a reassuring smile. "We're fine, thanks. Just a small accident." "If you're sure," the vendor said, looking between them before returning to his customers. Tiana handed over the salvaged groceries, noticing the woman's careful movements as she reorganized her bags. "Can I help you carry these to your car or something?" Tiana asked, guilt mixing with worry about just how much trouble she might be in. "I can manage," the woman replied, then seemed to soften slightly. But thank you for offering. That's when Tiana noticed the woman was studying her scrubs. Memorial Hospital, the woman read from the embroidered logo. Nursing program? Tiana nodded, surprised by the change in conversation. 3rd year. I'm supposed to be at pediatric rotation in. She glanced at her phone. 15 minutes ago. A flicker of understanding crossed the woman's face. That explains the rush. Important work. Not if I can't get there on time, Tiana said with a nervous laugh. The pregnant woman seemed to consider something before speaking again. Well, I won't keep you, but maybe take a different route next time, one with fewer people to crash into. There was something almost like humor in her eyes now, which only confused Tiana more. She'd expected anger, maybe even threats about reporting her. Instead, this woman, this pregnant woman with a badge, was being almost understanding. Definitely. I'm really sorry again, Tiana said, backing away slowly. I hope the rest of your day is better than this part was. The woman nodded. Drive safely. Tiana turned and continued toward the parking lot, her pace brisk but noticeably more careful than before. She couldn't shake the feeling that she'd just dodged something serious. What kind of officer was that? Woman? She hadn't identified herself or made any official comments about the incident. Maybe she was off duty. Or maybe she worked in a field where confrontations weren't necessary. As Tiana reached her car and tossed her bag into the passenger seat, she glanced back toward the market. In the distance, she could still see the pregnant woman, now talking to one of the vendors with a relaxed smile. Nothing about her suggested she was upset or planning to pursue the matter further. Starting her car, Tiana let out a long breath she hadn't realized she'd been holding. The clock on her dashboard reminded her she was now critically late. She'd have to face Dr. Henderson's disappointment and probably some extra assignments as punishment. But somehow that seemed less scary than what might have happened if the woman with the badge had decided to make an issue of their collision. As she pulled out of the parking lot, Tiana made a mental note to be more mindful of her surroundings, especially in public places. She'd been lucky this time. The woman could have been seriously hurt, and given her apparent profession, things could have gone very differently. What Tiana didn't know as she drove away was that the badge partially visible at the woman's waistband wasn't just any law enforcement credential. Had she seen the entire thing, she would have recognized the distinct star shape and lettering that identified not just an officer, but the county sheriff herself. And Sheriff Lucia Reyes, 6 months pregnant with her first child, was already making a mental note of her own about the young nursing student who had quite literally crashed into her morning. Tiana's day at the hospital went from bad to worse. As expected, Dr. Henderson had given her that disappointed look that somehow hurt more than any shouting could have. She'd been assigned to update all the patient charts as punishment for her tardiness, mind-numbing work that kept her 2 hours past the end of her shift. By the time she finally drove home, the sun had already set. Her small apartment welcomed her with its familiar silence, broken only by the gentle purring of her cat, Pepper, who wound between her legs as she dropped her keys on the counter. At least someone's happy to see me, Tiana mumbled, bending down to scratch behind Pepper's ears. Her thoughts kept drifting back to the morning incident. Something about the pregnant woman's calm reaction didn't sit right with her. Most people would have been angry, maybe even caused a scene. But that woman had been so composed, professional, and then there was the badge. Tiana couldn't shake the image from her mind as she heated up leftover rice and beans for dinner. What kind of officer was she? Police? Security? Transit authority? The badge had been partially hidden, and in her panicked state, Tiana hadn't gotten a good look. Doesn't matter, she told herself, settling onto her worn couch with her dinner plate. It's over. She didn't arrest you or anything. But the encounter continued to nag at her as she mindlessly scrolled through social media. A news headline caught her eye. Sheriff Reyes announces new community health initiative. The accompanying photo made Tiana choke on her food. There, smiling professionally at the camera, was the pregnant woman from the market. No way, Tiana whispered, enlarging the image. It was definitely her. The same copper hair, the same thoughtful eyes, the same pregnant belly. except now she wore a crisp uniform with a star-shaped badge prominently displayed. The caption read, County Sheriff Lucia Reyes discusses new partnership with Memorial Hospital. Memorial Hospital, where Tiana was doing her nursing clinicals. The realization hit her like a bucket of cold water. She hadn't just bumped into any officer. She'd body-checked the actual county sheriff. And not just that, but a sheriff who apparently had connections to her hospital. I'm dead, Tiana groaned, dropping her phone onto the couch. I'm absolutely dead. She spent the rest of the evening in a state of anxious dread, imagining all the ways this could come back to haunt her. Would the sheriff report her to the nursing program? Would she be waiting at the hospital tomorrow, ready to confront Tiana about her reckless behavior? The more Tiana thought about it, the worse the scenarios became in her mind. Sleep came fitfully that night, and she woke feeling like she hadn't rested at all. Still, she made sure to leave extra early, determined not to repeat yesterday's rushing disaster. The morning was clear and cool as Tiana drove to the hospital, rehearsing apologies in her head just in case she ran into Sheriff Reyes again. The pediatric ward was bustling when she arrived. Children's laughter mixed with the beeping of monitors and the quiet conversations of medical staff. Tiana checked in with the charge nurse and was relieved to find that Dr. Henderson had assigned her to actual patient care today, rather than more chart. Updates. Room 302. Needs vitals, the charge nurse said, handing Tiana a tablet. And heads up, we have some visitors from the county coming through later. Some new program they're starting. Try not to be late for that. Tiana's stomach tightened. Visitors?
Like who?
Some bigwigs from the sheriff's department. Something about community health outreach. The charge nurse shrugged. Just make sure your patients are comfortable and the rooms are tidy. With a growing sense of inevitability, Tiana went about her morning duties. She checked vital signs, helped patients with their breakfast, and assisted with medication rounds. All the while she kept glancing nervously at the ward entrance, expecting Sheriff Reyes to walk through at any moment. It was nearly noon when the visitors finally arrived. Tiana was helping a young boy with his lunch when she heard the distinct sound of multiple footsteps approaching. She looked up to see a small group of people in formal attire entering the ward, led by Dr. Henderson himself. And there she was. Sheriff Lucia Reyes, now dressed in a professional pantsuit that accommodated her pregnancy, walked beside the doctor. She looked even more authoritative than she had at the market, nodding thoughtfully as Dr. Henderson spoke about the pediatric ward setup. Tiana quickly ducked her head, focusing intently on helping her patient with his juice box. Maybe if she kept busy, the sheriff wouldn't notice her. Maybe she'd forgotten all about the clumsy nursing student who'd nearly knocked her over. And this is one of our third-year nursing students. Dr. Henderson's voice cut through Tiana's hopes. She looked up to find him gesturing toward her, the entire group now standing just a few feet away. Tiana is one of our most promising students despite occasional issues with punctuality. The slight jab made Tiana wince, but she managed a professional smile as she stood to greet the visitors. It's nice to meet you all, she said, her eyes carefully avoiding direct contact with the sheriff. Tiana, Sheriff Reyes repeated, a flash of recognition crossing her face. I believe we've met before. The room suddenly felt too warm. Tiana swallowed hard, aware of Dr. Henderson's curious glance between them. Yes, ma'am. We have. A small smile played at the corner of the sheriff's mouth, at the farmer's market. Yesterday morning, Dr. Henderson raised an eyebrow. Oh, I wasn't aware you two knew each other. We don't, not really, Sheriff Reyes said calmly. Just a brief encounter. Tiana was in quite a hurry. The way she emphasized the word hurry made Tiana want to sink through the floor. This was it. The sheriff was going to tell everyone how Tiana had carelessly crashed into her pregnant belly. Her nursing career would be over before it even began, but to her surprise, Sheriff Reyes simply continued. It's good to see you again. I'm glad you made it to your rotation safely. Tiana blinked, confused by the lack of accusation in the sheriff's tone. Thank you. And again, I'm really sorry about— No need to revisit that now, Sheriff Reyes interrupted smoothly. We all have our rushed mornings. She turned to Dr. Henderson. Shall we continue the tour? I'm particularly interested in seeing how the new isolation rooms are set up. As the group moved on, Tiana remained frozen in place, stunned by what had just happened. The sheriff hadn't exposed her, hadn't complained about her behavior, had in fact almost covered for her. Later, as Tiana was updating patient charts at the nurse's station, she felt someone approach. Looking up, she found Sheriff Reyes standing alone, one hand resting on her pregnant belly. "Sheriff Reyes?" Tiana said, quickly standing. "Is there something I can help you with?" The sheriff studied her for a moment. "I wanted to speak with you privately. About yesterday." Here it comes, Tiana thought. The lecture. The reprimand. Maybe even the threat. "I appreciate that you didn't mention the details of our meeting to Dr. Henderson," Tiana said quickly. "I was running late, but that's no excuse for not watching where I was going." Sheriff Reyes leaned against the counter. "No, it isn't. You could have seriously hurt someone or yourself." "I know," Tiana admitted. "I've been thinking about it all night. It was completely irresponsible." The sheriff nodded, then surprised Tiana with her next words. "I was a lot like you once. Always rushing. Always trying to prove myself in a field where people were quick to doubt me." Tiana looked up, caught off guard by the personal revelation. "You were?" "My first year as a deputy, I ran a red light responding to a call. No sirens, no lights, I was off duty but wanted to help." Sheriff Reyes shook her head at the memory. "Nearly caused a major accident. My supervisor could have fired me on the spot." "What happened?" Tiana asked, genuinely curious now. "He gave me a chance to learn from it instead." Sheriff Reyes met Tiana's gaze directly. "Sometimes we need to make mistakes to grow. But in both our professions, those mistakes can have serious consequences." Tiana nodded slowly, understanding dawning. "I get it. And I really am sorry. I know you are." The sheriff straightened up. "This community health initiative we're starting, it's going to need volunteers. Nursing students who can help with basic health screenings in underserved neighborhoods. That sounds important," Tiana said carefully, unsure where this was going. "It is, and from what Dr. Henderson tells me, despite your occasional tardiness, you're excellent with patients." Sheriff Reyes handed her a business card. "If you're interested in making up for yesterday in a constructive way, give my office a call. We could use someone with your skills." Tiana accepted the card, stunned by the unexpected turn. "Thank you. I will." With a small nod, Sheriff Reyes rejoined her group, leaving Tiana staring after her. The card in her hand felt like both a reprimand and an opportunity, a chance to make amends in a way she hadn't anticipated. As her shift ended that evening, Tiana tucked the sheriff's card carefully into her wallet. The day had not gone at all as she'd feared. Instead of punishment, she'd been offered redemption. Instead of judgment, understanding. Walking to her car, Tiana realized that sometimes the people you fear confronting the most turn out to be the ones who see your potential, even when you're at your worst. She didn't know if she would take the sheriff up on her offer, but the possibility of turning an embarrassing mistake into something meaningful gave her a sense of hope she hadn't expected to find. For 3 days, Sheriff Reyes's business card sat untouched in Tiana's wallet. Every time she opened it to pay for coffee or gas, she saw the embossed star and the neatly printed contact information. And every time she closed her wallet without making the call, "What's the worst that could happen?" her roommate Zoe asked as they sat on their tiny balcony Friday evening, sharing a pizza. "She's literally offering you a chance to do something good, and it might look amazing on your resume." Tiana picked at a piece of pepperoni. "What if it's a trap? What if I show up and she has me arrested for assaulting an officer or something?" Zoe nearly choked on her soda. "Are you serious? You bumped into her at a market, and she's pregnant, not made of glass. Still," Tiana muttered, "it's weird, right? That she'd offer me this opportunity right after I almost knocked her down. Maybe she saw something in you," Zoe suggested, reaching for another slice. "Like how quickly you tried to help. Or maybe she just needs volunteers and you happen to be in nursing school. Not everything is a conspiracy." Tiana sighed, knowing her friend was right. She was overthinking this, letting her guilt and embarrassment cloud her judgment. The truth was, the community health initiative actually sounded interesting. Working in underserved neighborhoods was exactly the kind of nursing she hoped to do after graduation. "Fine," she said finally. "I'll call on Monday." But Monday morning brought unexpected news. As Tiana checked her schedule at the hospital, the charge nurse approached with a grim expression. "Change of plans today," she said, handing Tiana a different assignment sheet. "There was an incident at the county jail overnight. We've got 3 inmates coming in for treatment and we're short-staffed. You're helping in the secure ward." Tiana stared at the paper. The secure ward? But I've never... Dr. Henderson says you're ready, the charge nurse cut in. And honestly, we don't have a choice. Follow all security protocols exactly as written. Deputy Wilson will brief you when you get there. The secure ward was on the hospital's top floor, with restricted elevator access and guards posted at every entrance. Tiana's hands trembled slightly as she swiped her temporary access card and stepped into a world she'd only heard about from more experienced nurses. Deputy Wilson turned out to be a stern-faced man with salt and pepper hair and the posture of someone who never truly relaxed. He barely looked at Tiana as he rattled off the rules. No personal items allowed near the patients. Maintain a safe distance at all times. Never turn your back on an inmate. All medical tools must be accounted for before and after treatment. These aren't violent offenders, he said, finally noticing Tiana's nervous expression. Minor injuries from a fight that broke out during breakfast, but protocol is protocol. The patients arrived one after another, handcuffed to their gurneys and accompanied by corrections officers. Tiana focused on being professional, checking vitals and cleaning wounds while trying to ignore the restraints and the watchful eyes of the guards. She was finishing up with the second patient, a young man with a split lip and bruised ribs, when a familiar voice came from the doorway. "How are we doing in here, Deputy Wilson?" Tiana looked up to see Sheriff Reyes entering the secure ward, her pregnant belly even more pronounced in her official uniform. The sheriff surveyed the room with a practiced eye before her gaze landed on Tiana. "Ms. Johnson," she said, recognition flickering across her face. "I didn't expect to see you here." Tiana straightened up, suddenly very aware of the bloody gauze in her gloved hands. "They needed extra help, Sheriff. I was assigned this morning." Sheriff Reyes nodded, then turned to Deputy Wilson. "I need a moment with you about the incident report." As the two stepped aside to talk, Tiana finished bandaging the inmate's injuries. She could hear snippets of the conversation, something about inconsistent statements and possible disciplinary actions. The sheriff's voice remained calm but carried an undercurrent of authority that seemed to make even the veteran deputy stand a little straighter. When the last inmate had been treated and taken back to the jail, Tiana began cleaning up the examination room. She was disposing of used supplies when Sheriff Reyes appeared in the doorway alone. "You did good work today," the sheriff said, leaning against the doorframe. Her hand rested on her belly in what seemed to be a habitual gesture. "The nurses said you handled yourself professionally." "Thank you," Tiana replied, unsure what else to say. Sheriff Reyes studied her for a moment. "Have you thought about my offer?" "The community health initiative?" Tiana hesitated, then decided honesty was the best approach. "I've been thinking about it. I was actually planning to call your office today. But then you got pulled into emergency duty." The sheriff nodded understandingly. "That happens a lot in both our lines of work. Plans change." "I am interested," Tiana admitted. I guess I was nervous." "Because of our first meeting?" A small smile played at the corner of the sheriff's mouth. "Partly," Tiana said. "And partly because I didn't understand why you'd want me involved after that. I didn't make the best first impression." Sheriff Reyes entered the room fully now, closing the door partway for privacy. "Can I tell you something about leadership, Tiana? Something they probably don't teach in nursing school?" Tiana nodded, curious despite her lingering nervousness. "The best way to judge someone's character isn't by watching them when everything's going right," Sheriff Reyes said. "It's by seeing how they handle things when they've messed up." The words hung in the air between them as Tiana considered their meaning. "You didn't make excuses that day at the market," the sheriff continued. "You tried to help. And today, thrown into a situation you weren't prepared for, you adapted and did your job well." She shrugged slightly. "Those are qualities I value in people I work with." Tiana felt a weight lifting from her shoulders. "So this isn't about making me pay for what happened?" Sheriff Reyes actually laughed at that. "If I held a grudge against everyone who bumped into me, especially now," she gestured at her pregnant belly, "I'd never get anything done. No. This is about recognizing potential." For the first time since their initial encounter, Tiana felt herself truly relax around the sheriff. "Then yes, I'd like to be involved in the initiative." "Good," Sheriff Reyes said with a nod. "There's an orientation this Saturday at the community center on Elm Street, 9 a.m. She started to leave, then paused. "And Tiana? Maybe leave a little earlier than you think you need to." The teasing comment, delivered with a raised eyebrow and a hint of a smile, made Tiana laugh despite herself. "Yes, ma'am. I'll be there with plenty of time to spare. Saturday morning arrived with perfect weather, clear skies and a gentle breeze that carried the scent of blooming jacaranda trees. True to her word, Tiana left her apartment a full 45 minutes before she needed to, even stopping for coffee on the way and still arriving at the community center 20 minutes early. The old brick building was already buzzing with activity. Tables had been set up in the main hall, each with different signs: blood pressure screening, diabetes information, vaccination records, nutrition counseling. A mix of people in medical scrubs and sheriff's department polo shirts moved around, setting up equipment and arranging informational pamphlets. Tiana stood in the entrance, coffee in hand, trying to figure out where she should check in. That's when she noticed Sheriff Reyes across the room, deep in conversation with an older man in a doctor's coat. Despite being off-duty in casual clothes, the sheriff still carried herself with the same natural authority Tiana had observed at the hospital. As if sensing she was being watched, Sheriff Reyes looked up and caught Tiana's eye. With a small nod of acknowledgement, she excused herself from the conversation and made her way across the room. "You're early," she noted, looking pleased. "I didn't want to risk running into any pregnant sheriffs on the way," Tiana replied with a tentative smile. Sheriff Reyes laughed. "Good thinking." She gestured around the room. "What do you think? This is just the setup phase, but next weekend will open to the public." Tiana looked around with new appreciation. "It's impressive. You're offering a lot of services." "Many people in this area don't have regular access to health care," the sheriff explained as she guided Tiana through the hall. "Simple screenings can catch problems early, before they become emergencies, and it builds trust between law enforcement and the community." The sincerity in her voice struck Tiana. This clearly wasn't just a public relations stunt or a box to check off on some departmental requirement. Sheriff Reyes genuinely cared about the people she served. "I've assigned you to the blood pressure and basic health assessment station," the sheriff continued. "You'll be working with Nurse Patel from County General. She's been doing this for years and can show you the ropes." They stopped at a table where a middle-aged woman was calibrating a blood pressure cuff. She looked up with a warm smile as Sheriff Reyes made the introductions. "Tiana is one of our nursing students from Memorial," the sheriff explained. "Tiana, this is Deepa Patel, one of the best nurses in the county." "Oh, stop with the flattery, Lucia," Nurse Patel said with a wave of her hand. "You'll make the girl think I'm special or something." She turned to Tiana with kind eyes. "Don't let the uniform intimidate you, honey. Our sheriff here may look tough, but she's got the biggest heart in the department. Been pushing for this program for years." Sheriff Reyes looked slightly embarrassed by the praise. "I should get back to coordinating the setup. Deepa will take good care of you, Tiana." She started to walk away, and turned back. "And thank you for coming. It means a lot." As the sheriff moved on to the next station, Nurse Patel handed Tiana a volunteer badge. "So how did you get involved with this?" "Most students don't hear about these opportunities until their final year." Tiana clipped the badge to her shirt, wondering how to explain. "It's kind of a funny story, actually. I literally ran into Sheriff Reyes at a farmer's market." "Like physically collided with her?" Nurse Patel's eyes widened. "You're the one who bumped into her?" "Oh, honey, she told us about that. She didn't mention it was you, though." "She told people about it?" Tiana asked, mortified. "Only because we've been telling her to slow down. Even pregnant, she tries to do everything, be everywhere." Nurse Patel shook her head fondly. She said the incident reminded her to be more careful, especially now. Said the young woman who bumped into her looked even more terrified than she felt. Tiana couldn't help but laugh. "I was. I thought my life was over. And instead, here you are," Nurse Patel said, gesturing to the community center. "Life's funny that way sometimes. Now let me show you how we run this station." As the orientation continued, Tiana found herself repeatedly glancing toward Sheriff Reyes. The woman who had every reason to be angry with her had instead offered her an opportunity to grow. A chance encounter that could have ended badly had somehow led to something meaningful. For the first time since the collision at the market, Tiana felt like maybe everything happened for a reason. The first official day of the Community Health Initiative arrived with unexpected challenges. Heavy rain pounded against the community center's roof, turning the parking lot into a maze of puddles. Despite the weather, a line had formed outside before the doors even opened. People of all ages huddled under umbrellas, some without any protection from the downpour at all. "I didn't expect this many people," Tiana said as she helped Nurse Patel arrange blood pressure cuffs and stethoscopes at their station, especially not in this weather. That's how you know it's needed, Nurse Patel replied, checking their supply of alcohol wipes. When people are willing to stand in the rain for basic health services, it tells you something about the gaps in our system. The doors opened at 9 sharp, and the room quickly filled with dripping coats and squeaking shoes. Sheriff Reyes moved through the crowd, helping direct people to the right stations, occasionally stopping to speak with families in fluent Spanish. Even at 8 months pregnant, she seemed tireless, her focus completely on making the event run smoothly. Tiana's station quickly became one of the busiest. She fell into a rhythm, greeting each person, taking their blood pressure, asking about medications and symptoms, recording everything on a simple form they could take to their next station. Many hadn't had their blood pressure checked in years. Some had never established care with a regular doctor. "You're running a little high," Tiana told an older man whose readings were concerning. "Have you been feeling okay? Any headaches, dizziness?" The man shrugged. "Been having some chest pain, but that's normal at my age, right? Can't afford to see no doctor for every little thing." Tiana shared a glance with Nurse Patel, who smoothly took over. "Sir, I think we should have you see one of our physicians today. Dr. Rivera is right over there. And he can check you out, no charge." As Nurse Patel walked the man to the doctor's station, Sheriff Reyes appeared at Tiana's side. "Everything okay?" she asked, her voice low. "Possible hypertension with chest pain," Tiana replied. "Nurse Patel is getting him to Dr. Rivera." The sheriff nodded, then winced suddenly, her hand going to her belly. Tiana noticed immediately. "Are you all right?" "Fine," Sheriff Reyes said, though her expression suggested otherwise. "Just Braxton Hicks contractions. Been having them on and off all morning." "Maybe you should sit down for a bit," Tiana suggested, concerned by the sheriff's slight pallor. "Too much to do," Sheriff Reyes replied, already scanning the room for the next issue that needed her attention. "I'll rest later." Before Tiana could argue, the sheriff was moving away, stopping to help an elderly woman who was struggling with her paperwork. Nurse Patel returned, shaking her head. "That man had a blood pressure of 190/110. Dr. Rivera thinks he might have been on the verge of a heart attack. He's arranging transportation to the hospital right now." "Wow," Tiana breathed. "So we might have saved his life today." "That's why we do this," Nurse Patel said with a smile. "One person at a time." She glanced across the room. "Speaking of which, has anyone checked on the sheriff?" "She's been on her feet for hours." "I just tried," Tiana admitted. "She says it's just Braxton Hicks." Nurse Patel frowned. "She said the same thing last week at our planning meeting. That woman never slows down unless she absolutely has to." The morning continued at a relentless pace. Tiana barely had time to take a sip of water between patients. By noon, her legs ached from standing, and her voice had grown hoarse from repeating the same instructions over and over. But seeing people walk away with information about their health status, some relieved, others with a plan for follow-up care, made every moment worth it. During a rare lull, Tiana stepped away to use the restroom. As she washed her hands, the door swung open and Sheriff Reyes entered, looking even paler than before. "Sheriff?" Tiana asked, immediately concerned by the woman's unsteady gait. "Are you sure you're okay?" Sheriff Reyes leaned heavily against the sink. "I think—" She stopped, taking a deep breath. "I think these might not be Braxton Hicks after all." Tiana's nursing instincts kicked in. "How far apart are the contractions? And how long have they been coming?" "Maybe 15 minutes. Started getting stronger about an hour ago." Sheriff Reyes grimaced. "But I'm not due for another 3 weeks." "Babies don't always follow our schedules," Tiana said gently, helping the sheriff to a chair in the corner of the restroom. "I think we should get you checked out. First babies often come early." Sheriff Reyes shook her head stubbornly. "We can't shut down the event. There are still people waiting." "No one's talking about shutting it down," Tiana assured her. "The volunteers can handle things. Right now you need to take care of yourself and your baby." Another contraction hit, making the sheriff grip the edge of the chair. When it passed, she looked up at Tiana with reluctant acceptance. "Okay, but I don't want a big scene. There are deputies and officers out there who report to me. I need to maintain your authority," Tiana finished for her. "I understand. Wait here. I'll get Nurse Patel." Minutes later, they had a plan. Nurse Patel would bring her car to the back entrance, while Tiana helped the sheriff out through the kitchen. They'd take her to the hospital. and Deputy Chief Rivera, the sheriff's second-in-command, would handle the rest of the event. "This is embarrassing," Sheriff Reyes muttered as Tiana supported her through the back hallway. "I'm the one who's supposed to help people in emergencies, not the other way around." "Even sheriffs are allowed to have babies," Tiana replied, trying to keep the mood light despite her concern. The contractions were definitely getting stronger and closer together. Besides, think of it this way. You're setting a good example about knowing when to ask for help. Outside, rain still fell steadily, creating a curtain of water between the door and Nurse Patel's waiting car. Tiana opened her jacket, trying to shield the sheriff as much as possible as they made their way across the short distance. They were halfway to the car when Sheriff Reyes stopped suddenly, a small gasp escaping her lips. "My water just broke," she whispered, looking down at the puddle forming at her feet, indistinguishable from the rainwater except to those who knew. "Okay, let's keep moving," Tiana said calmly, though her heart raced with the realization that this baby might be coming faster than any of them had anticipated. "The car's right there." They made it to the hospital in record time, Nurse Patel driving with the confident urgency of someone who had been in this situation before. The entire way, Tiana sat in the back seat with Sheriff Reyes, timing contractions and offering what comfort she could. 4 minutes apart now, she told Nurse Patel as they pulled up to the emergency entrance, and lasting about a minute each. "This little one's in a hurry," Nurse Patel remarked as she helped the sheriff from the car. "Good thing we got you here when we did." The hospital staff sprang into action when they recognized the sheriff. Within minutes, she was in a wheelchair heading up to the maternity ward. Tiana and Nurse Patel following close behind. "Someone should call my husband," Sheriff Reyes said between contractions, her usual commanding tone replaced by a mixture of pain and worry. "He's at a conference in Phoenix. Supo. It's had to fly back tomorrow." "I'll take care of it," Nurse Patel assured her, already pulling out her phone. "What's his number?" As they reached the maternity floor, a nurse approached with admission forms. "We need someone to fill these out." "Are you family?" she asked, looking at Tiana. Before Tiana could explain, Sheriff Reyes reached out and grasped her hand. "She stays with me," she said firmly. "She's been timing my contractions and knows what's going on." The nurse nodded, unfazed. "All right then, let's get you into a gown and checked out." What followed was a whirlwind of activity. The contractions intensified rapidly, and the doctor confirmed what Tiana had suspected. The baby was coming quickly. Sheriff Reyes's husband was on his way, having managed to book an emergency flight, but it was clear he wouldn't make it in time. "I can't do this without him," Sheriff Reyes said during a rare moment between contractions, a vulnerability in her voice that Tiana had never heard before. "We've been preparing for this for months. He has the birth plan. He knows what to do." Tiana, who had been about to step out now that medical professionals were taking over, paused at the door. "What can I do to help?" she asked simply. Sheriff Reyes looked up, momentary surprise giving way to relief. "Would you stay, just until he gets here?" The request was so human, so removed from their previous encounters. The busy sheriff, the authority figure, the community leader, that Tiana felt a surge of empathy. This wasn't about their professional relationship anymore. This was one woman asking another for support during one of life's most intense moments. "Of course I'll stay," Tiana said, returning to the bedside. "We've got this." The next 2 hours tested them both. Sheriff Reyes, who Tiana now thought of simply as Lucia, faced each contraction with the same determination she brought to her work, but even her strength had limits. Between the waves of pain, they talked about anything to keep her mind occupied. Lucia's childhood in New Mexico, Tiana's dreams of working in community health, the yellow nursery Lucia and her husband had painted with giraffes on the walls. "I never pictured my baby's birth quite like this," Lucia admitted during a brief respite. "With a nursing student I met because she nearly knocked me down in a market," Tiana laughed. "Life has a weird way of connecting people, doesn't it?" "It does," Lucia agreed, then tensed as another contraction began. I think this baby's coming now." The doctor confirmed she was right. Within minutes, the room transformed as nurses prepared for delivery. Tiana moved to leave, feeling this was too private a moment for someone who was essentially a stranger. But Lucia's grip on her hand tightened. "Don't you dare leave now," she said through gritted teeth. "Not when we're so close to the finish line." So Tiana stayed, holding Lucia's hand and encouraging her through the final, most difficult part of labor. When the baby finally arrived, a healthy girl with a powerful set of lungs, the look of pure joy on Lucia's face made every moment of their unusual journey together worth it. "She's beautiful," Tiana whispered as the nurses placed the swaddled infant on Lucia's chest. "Absolutely perfect." Lucia looked up, tears streaming down her face. "Thank you," she said softly, "for staying, for helping, for everything." In that moment, as the rain continued to fall outside and new life made its presence known inside, Tiana understood something profound about the work she was training to do. Nursing wasn't just about blood pressures and medications. It was about being present in the most human moments, sometimes planned, sometimes completely unexpected. And sometimes, those unexpected moments began with a collision in a crowded market. 6 months passed in a blur of changes. Summer faded into fall, and fall gave way to winter's first chill. Tiana completed her nursing clinicals with honors, and now faced her final semester before graduation. And across town, Sheriff Lucia Reyes adjusted to the delicate balance of being both a new mother and the county's highest-ranking law enforcement officer. The community health initiative had grown beyond anyone's expectations. What started as a single-day event now operated every weekend, with additional evening hours on Wednesdays. Volunteer numbers had tripled, and a small grant from the state had allowed them to purchase better equipment and expand their services. Tiana had become a regular volunteer, scheduling her shifts around classes and study sessions. Today was special, though, the 6-month anniversary of the program. The community center buzzed with energy as volunteers hung a banner and arranged a small celebration for after hours. "Blood pressure's looking much better." "Mr. Chen," Tiana said, removing the cuff from an elderly man's arm. "Those new medications must be working." The man beamed at her. "I feel better too. More energy. My daughter says I'm less grumpy." Tiana laughed. "That's a nice bonus effect. Make sure you see Dr. Rivera before you leave today. He'll want to know about the improvement." As Mr. Chen moved to the next station, Tiana looked up to see a familiar face entering the community center. Sheriff Reyes, dressed in civilian clothes today, carried her baby daughter in a front-facing carrier. The infant, bundled against the December chill, peered curiously at the bustling room with wide eyes. A small crowd immediately gathered around them. Most of the volunteers hadn't seen the baby since she was born, and even regular patients seemed eager to catch a glimpse of the youngest deputy, as people had jokingly started calling her. Tiana hung back, giving others space to coo over the baby. She and Sheriff Reyes, Lucia as she now thought of her, had developed a unique connection since the birth, but their busy lives meant they usually only saw each other in passing at these events. Eventually, the crowd dispersed as people returned to their duties. Lucia made her way over to Tiana's station, adjusting the baby carrier as she walked. "The woman of the hour," Tiana said with a smile. "I wasn't sure you'd make it today. And miss our 6-month celebration? Not a chance." Lucia looked down at her daughter. "Sophia wanted to see where it all began, didn't you, Mija?" The baby gurgled in response, waving a tiny fist in the air. She had her mother's eyes, warm brown and alert, but her father's dimpled smile. "She's getting so big," Tiana marveled, remembering the tiny newborn she'd met on the day of her birth. "How are you doing? Really doing, not the answer you give everyone else." Lucia's professional mask slipped, revealing the fatigue beneath. "Honestly, I'm exhausted. Being sheriff is hard. Being a mom is harder. Doing both at once sometimes feels impossible." "You make it look easy, though," Tiana said. "That's part of the job." Lucia glanced around to make sure no one was waiting for Tiana's services. "Got a minute? I wanted to talk to you about something." They moved to a quiet corner of the room, where Lucia managed to extricate Sophia from the carrier and hand her to Tiana. The baby settled contentedly in Tiana's arms, grasping at her stethoscope with curious fingers. "She likes you," Lucia observed. "But then she was technically with you before she even met her dad." Tiana smiled at the memory. Sophia's father had arrived at the hospital 2 hours after the birth, rushing in with wild eyes and hastily packed bags, only to find his wife peacefully holding their daughter while chatting with the nursing student who had helped deliver her. "So what did you want to talk about?" Tiana asked, gently bouncing Sophia when she began to fuss. "Your graduation," Lucia said. It's coming up soon, right? What are your plans after? Tiana sighed. Apply for jobs, I guess. The hospital has some openings in the pediatric ward. Or I might try for the emergency department. Better pay but crazy hours. Lucia seemed to hesitate, then forged ahead. What if there was a third option? We're expanding the community health program. The county commissioners approved funding for a full-time registered nurse position. Someone to coordinate all the health services, manage the volunteers, develop new programs. Tiana stared at her. Are you offering me a job? I'm suggesting you apply for one, Lucia clarified. There's a proper hiring process, of course, but you'd be an excellent candidate. You know the program inside and out. The volunteers respect you, and you've got a real gift for connecting with patients. Sophia chose that moment to grab Tiana's braided hair, tugging with surprising strength. As Tiana gently disentangled the tiny fingers, she considered the unexpected opportunity. I never thought about working for the sheriff's department, she admitted. Technically, you'd be working for the county health department. We just partner with them, Lucia smiled. And I promise not all job interviews involve delivering the interviewer's baby. Tiana laughed. That would be a tough standard to maintain. She handed Sophia back to her mother, watching as the baby immediately snuggled against Lucia's chest. I'll think about it seriously. That's all I'm asking, Lucia said, returning the baby to her carrier. The application deadline is next Friday, and regardless of what you decide, I hope you'll join us for the celebration tonight. My husband's bringing food from that Mexican place everyone loves. After Lucia moved on to greet other volunteers, Tiana returned to her station, her mind spinning with possibilities. The job would be challenging but meaningful. She'd be building something important from the ground up, and it would certainly make for an interesting story. How bumping into a pregnant sheriff led to a career. The rest of the afternoon passed quickly. As the last patients filtered out, volunteers began transforming the community center for the evening celebration. Tables were pushed. Ed together in the center of the room, and someone brought out a cake decorated with the initiative's logo. Tiana was arranging plates when Nurse Patel appeared beside her. So, did the sheriff talk to you about the position? She asked, a knowing smile on her face. Tiana's eyes widened. You knew about that? Who do you think recommended you? Nurse Patel handed her a stack of napkins. You've got a gift, girl. I've been nursing for 30 years and I can spot talent when I see it. I don't know if I'm ready for that kind of responsibility, Tiana admitted. I haven't even graduated yet. None of us are ever ready, Nurse Patel said wisely. But sometimes the right opportunity comes along and you just have to take the leap. The celebration dinner was a lively affair. Volunteers shared stories from the past 6 months. The elderly man whose undiagnosed diabetes had been caught just in time. The young mother who learned she had a heart condition that required surgery. The children who received their first ever dental screenings. Tiana found herself seated next to Lucia's husband, Carlos, a soft-spoken engineer who bounced Sophia, on his knee while recounting the frantic flight he'd taken to make it back for her birth. I was in a meeting when Lucia's deputy called, he told Tiana. I've never moved so fast in my life. Left my laptop, my suitcase, everything. Just grabbed my wallet and ran. He made it, Lucia added, joining the conversation. That's what matters. Thanks to you, Carlos said, looking at Tiana with genuine gratitude. Lucia told me how you stayed with her. Not everyone would do that for someone they barely knew. Tiana felt a blush rising to her cheeks. Anyone would have done the same. No, Lucia said firmly. Not anyone. That's what makes you special, Tiana. And it's why you'd be perfect for the coordinator position. Later, as the celebration wound down and people began to leave, Tiana found herself helping Lucia pack up Sophia's seemingly endless baby supplies. Did you know, Lucia said conversationally, that in some cultures they say people who are present at a birth become connected for life? Like family, but chosen rather than born. Tiana smiled as she folded a tiny blanket. Is that your subtle way of saying you're not going to stop pestering me until I apply for this job? Maybe, Lucia admitted with a laugh. Or maybe it's my way of saying that sometimes the most unexpected encounters lead to the most important relationships. She paused, her expression growing more serious. You know, I used to believe everything in life happened for a reason. Then I became sheriff and saw too much senseless tragedy to keep believing that. But you literally running into me that day? That feels like one of those rare moments when the universe gets it, Right, Tiana considered. The strange path that had led them here, from a collision at a market to a delivery room to this moment of friendship and potential new beginnings. I think I'll pick up an application on Monday, she said finally. Lucia's face lit up. Really? No promises about taking the job, Tiana cautioned. But I'd be crazy not to at least apply, right? Right, Lucia agreed, buckling Sophia into her car seat. The baby had fallen asleep, her tiny lips slightly parted, one fist curled against her cheek. And Tiana? Whatever you decide, thank you for everything. As Tiana watched Lucia and her family drive away, she reflected on how differently things might have turned out. If she hadn't been running late that morning, if she'd taken a different route through the market, if Lucia had reacted with anger instead of understanding. So many small moments that could have gone another way. Her phone buzzed with a text from her roommate. How was the celebration? Tiana smiled as she typed her reply. Amazing. I think I might have found my dream job. She pocketed her phone and looked up at the night sky, stars just beginning to appear through breaks in the winter clouds. Sometimes the worst moments, the ones that filled you with embarrassment or regret, turned out to be doorways to unexpected possibilities. Sometimes running into the wrong person at the wrong time was exactly what needed to happen. And sometimes a simple apology could be the first step on an entirely new path.